All right, folks, welcome to today's Women Bike webinar. My name is Liz Murphy. I'm the Communications Director for the League of American Bicyclists. Today we are talking about Women Bike, Women Lead, which is a pilot program, joint effort between the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition and the Multicultural Communities for Mobility. But before we get started, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about the League and about this mini grant program. So the Women Bike program out of the League, creating pathways for women of diverse backgrounds to embrace biking as an everyday activity and participate as riders, advocates, and leaders to create strong communities and celebrate the joy of riding a bike. And part of the way that the League meets that mission is by giving out mini grants to community leaders who are doing awesome work all over the country in elevating and amplifying the voices of women bike leaders everywhere. So before we jump in, I just wanted to give a shout out to some of the other mini grant recipients from last year. Every recipient has been doing one of these awesome webinars, and they've also put together a toolkit for their pilot program so that folks like you can use them in your community and replicate them in your neighborhoods and in your towns. So to find more information on those pilot programs, you can follow that URL, bikeleague.org/content/womenbikefunding, and you'll find the resources there with more information on each pilot program and step-by-step instructions as to how you can make it happen for you locally. So before I kick it off to my presenters, I just wanted to give them a quick introduction. Today you'll be hearing from Daniela Alcedo. She is a member and former chair of the Pomona Valley Bicycle Coalition, which is a chapter organization of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. And we're also hearing from Maria Sippen, who is an advisory board member with Multicultural Communities for Mobility. And so before I kick it off to them, I'll just let folks know that we will definitely have time for questions at the end. So please feel free to add those into the question panel on the overall control panel. You can type those in there at any time. And at the very end, I will be reading those and moderating those to our panelists. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Daniela and Maria.
Great. There we go. Hello. All right, so let me just get this showing. One moment. All right. So let me just put this here. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in to our webinar. My name is Daniela Alcedo. I am a member of the Pomona Valley Bicycle Coalition, a chapter of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. And I am here with Maria.
Hey. So we're figuring out how to pass the mic. We're physically in two different spaces, but this seems to be working okay so far. Yeah. My name is Maria Sippen, and I represent Multicultural Communities for Mobility as an advisory board member. And I'm just like an all-out social media user who advocates for people who bike and walk and use transit. And I just wanted to take my advocacy to a whole nother level with Daniela through Women Bike, Women Lead. There are so many groups of women organizing in different ways in LA, like the She Wolf Attack Team. They mentor and convene women interested in competitive cycling. The Ovarian Psychos are known for clitoral mass, and many consistent programs reaching women of color held at their home base. And Women Bike, Women Lead was just another opportunity to increase visibility of women biking in LA. We were already connected with so many of them on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, and we're always like supporting one another through retweets and going to each other's events. But we really wanted to get to know them even more and meet others and see where our interests cross and how we could possibly work together later on. So you could say that, you know, we had some really personal interest here to create this large party for us and friends, and obviously to meet a whole bunch of people we can bring into our circles. So this was just a really great excuse for that, and we thank the League for helping us pilot something like this through the mini grant program. So here we go.
Yes.
Next slide.
Yes. Maria, did you want to go on this part?
Sure. Here's like a basic menu of what we're covering in today's webinar. We'll get through this really briefly, and you can always reach out to us later if we don't cover something you were interested in, and you'll also get the link to our toolkit, which you can see some of the ins and outs of our planning process and things we've learned. I don't think we're special in any way for putting something like this together, and we want to send the message that many people can begin their own programs, grassroots or greater, with the help of allies, partners, and like-minded individuals who believe in a cause. So for our purposes, we did things with 2 bike rides and a summit, and our really big objective was to recreate the League's National Bike Summit and to bring the vibes of the Women's Forum here to LA, because so many people don't have the opportunity to travel and be engaged there. So we wanted to duplicate that experience or create our very own personal way of bringing advocacy from the national level here locally. Next slide.
Yes, so a little bit about what is Women Bike, Women Lead. We created an opportunity for women and women-identified individuals to come together and build relationships and empower their knowledge and skills to become change agents in their communities. And how were we going to do that? We were wondering, well, why don't we create it like a summit? But we would want to have something fun before the summit, and also as a way to get the really interested folks to attend the summit. So we created 2 bike rides and then the summit. So all of that is the series of Women Bike, Women Lead. A lot of it had to do with me personally. At one point, when I was involved with Pomona Valley Bicycle Coalition, I remember seeing that there was a lot of opportunities and resources available, but not a lot of people have access to that information or are unaware that such resources exist. So that is why we came together and said, let's do something to let people know that these resources exist, especially in Los Angeles County and in Southern California, because there are so many opportunities out there, and there are a lot of great individuals out there that really want to be change agents, but they may not be aware of what's out there or the support network. And so this was an opportunity to build relationships and to strengthen each other's goals, so that way we can feel competent to go out in our communities and be that change agent. So with that, as I mentioned, we had 2 bike rides to promote the Women Bike, Women Lead series and the summit. So our first bike ride was in January, and as you can tell, it's hardly rains and it's not very cold at all in sunny Southern California, so we're wearing shorts, and it was actually a pretty warm day in January. We went on our bike ride. We had a smaller group of about 9 women, and with 1 little girl with us as well to the bike ride. On our bike ride, we learned a few lessons. One of the lessons being having a backup repair kit for flat tires. We had 2 flat tires on our bike ride, and so we all came together and helped each other to put the tubes back onto our bike wheels. But it was a lesson that we learned, like, okay, we need to, it took away from our time of what we wanted, because each time that happened, it took about 15 to 10 minutes. So that also fed into the time of our what we wanted to do throughout the bike ride. So that was a lesson that we learned, is kind of anticipating for things like flats or detours to happen. Our second and last ride was in downtown Los Angeles, and we had a larger turnout for the ride. So you can see here we took a picture in City Hall, in front of downtown Los Angeles City Hall. We also had the opportunity to have a film crew there to film a certain cyclist from the Ovarian Psychos to be in a music video. So they wanted to capture some parts of her daily life, which is biking, and so we were able to use that opportunity to film everybody in the bike ride. But not only that, we also had a great ambiance of folks there. Everybody was very supportive and really wanting to meet one another. So it was a really great atmosphere. Everybody was very kind. What we did is we rode to a lunch spot in downtown LA, and we discussed what it is, Women Bike, Women Lead, why did we have this bike ride, and why we want people to attend the summit. And so that was our way of introducing people to the series and to the summit, and if they're really interested, to sign up for the summit, which was what we did for both of our bike rides. So that was our recruitment strategy for that. One other thing that we did is we had spoke cards for each of our rides. So the spoke cards on the left were for the first ride, and the ones to the right were for our second ride. And we just wanted to do something fun to give everybody, saying thank you for participating, because maybe they might not want to be in the summit or they might not want to attend, but we wanted to give them something to remember their experience, and maybe that they would like to participate in something like this in the future. So, and spoke cards are always fun to collect on your bike anyway, so we wanted to give a little gift and personalize each one for each ride for everybody. All right, so I'll give it to you, Maria.
Thank you. With the bike rides as a recruitment tool, we really tried to have a wider outreach strategy because we have no limitations for how many people can come on a bike ride. I mean, yes, for the second ride, like, we got a little bit more savvy and purchased more tubes of all sizes so we can be ready, and we enlisted some wonderful ride marshals to help us out. But no matter how big the ride was, it wasn't really a problem for us. However, for the third component of our event series, the summit, we really had to switch gears and figure out how can we be inviting but have some limits at the same time. We were really troubled by this issue of only being able to accommodate like fewer than 40 people to attend when we had done this massive outreach effort to try to get people to attend this free event. And of course, with any free event, you get a lot of interest in the beginning, lots of registration. And then the outcomes are a little bit different. You get a lot of people signing up, but you get fewer people to show up, and it was hard to estimate exactly how many people we could accommodate on the actual day. But you know, I think most of our planning wasn't too much around like the logistics of how many people we could accommodate, but we were really all about the quality of the event and didn't focus too much on the numbers of how many people. We didn't think it would be a success or failure based on how many people attended, rather the kind of rich discussions we would have at the summit. Like we said, this was inspired by the Women's Bike Forum that I've been fortunate enough to attend once, and I really got to see how important it was to carve out this space for women and allies who are interested in getting to know women better and their needs, and how cycling advocacy could shift and better fit our needs. So the summit, I think when we started to plan, we were so excited to convene a bunch of people we knew who were experts in our eyes. So we were so excited to invite people like Melissa Balmer for Pedal Love, and to introduce Tamika Butler to the world, because at this point she was very new to the Bike Coalition, and we thought so many people would love to meet her. And Rio Contreras, who is someone who supports a lot of the women's initiatives, but doesn't necessarily identify as a woman, and prefers to be referred to with gender-neutral pronouns such as they, them, and theirs. So I think this wonderful mix and diversity in the room challenged us to interact with people who were engaged in cycling in different levels and who also had very unique identities that we might not have really noticed in other spaces. So this was a very intimate place where we can get to know one another. The whole objective was to inform and empower participants to be local advocates, volunteers, and action doers, and many of them already were. We really had to tap into our resources to figure out how can we make this happen with our limited budget, and how can we be really intentional about the program and give something to people that they might not have expected, or give something very unique where they can grow and learn and have some food for thought, at least at the end of the day. And you can go into our toolkit, which we'll share later, to walk you through all the components of our summit planning. But for now, we'll focus more about the interest and the subject matter of it, and not so much the logistics. So next slide.
All right.
So this is a very basic pie chart of the interest that women specified when they registered for the event. So 17 people pointed out that their interests were in health. Another major one was transportation and policy and advocacy. So we use this data that we collected from the Eventbrite registration and the Google Forms that we circulated during the bike rides to find out like what women were interested in. And I think for the most part I was surprised. But at the same time, I expected this. I thought that people really wanted to see what kind of professional development support that they could get from a summit, and we harness our connections to be able to bring people who can speak on these topics so that we too could discover things about health and transportation, policy and advocacy and marketing that we didn't know before. And even though we've been engaged in advocacy for a while as professional volunteers, Daniela knows that very well, that there's still a lot for us to learn, and people who aren't immersed so much in advocacy kind of want to see how they can get their feet wet. Could this turn into a career? There are absolutely so many opportunities, I think, for people to turn this into a professional career, and for students who are exploring those options. It was a really good experience, I think, for most people to see how people are working in this field in real life as transportation planners, as executive directors, as marketing managers and coordinators, and so forth. So that was really cool to see how we were able to connect people's interests to the actual panelists and activities that took place at the summit. Next slide.
So as Maria mentioned, we wanted to pick a panel, we wanted to make panels that were available for our audience, and we wanted to inform our audience with information regarding issues that we thought were important at the moment. So we created 3 panels, one of them being community health and equity, the second one local planning and policy, and the third one about media and marketing. We felt that these were 3 topics that we really wanted to introduce to people, mainly because maybe it would be their first time being introduced to it, or they might not have thought that marketing and media might be something that's really important, which is very important, and we were very fortunate enough to have Petal Love present on that topic. And so having these panelists helped us get our message across to what we wanted to relate to our audience. And if, let's say, another organization wanted to create a Women Bike, Women Lead series, they can always create a panel or summit that is tailored towards their goals, such as sports and racing or mechanics. So we just, the toolkit also explains that it will be available for other organizations to use and to tailor to their own interest. And just for our interest, we created these 3 panels, and our panelists helped get that message across, and they were really great and thankful and so supportive of the program or of the summit. And I think that they helped informed our audience a lot. We had audience members that may be very into the cycling advocacy world, but are not very familiar with how does local government and how does that process work with agencies, government agencies. So we were able to reveal a lot of information to people that we hope in the end, they build these connections. So we also wanted to create a schedule that was respectful of everyone's time. Summits are can be a lot, so we wanted to make sure our summit wasn't overwhelming. I believe we had dedicated at least 5 hours to the summit with the hour break in between. And as you'll notice, our brochure and our spoke cards and our flyers have been really well designed. We actually contracted a graphic designer, and that actually helped us out a lot because people were very impressed with the presentation and how the material looked like. It is a worthy investment, and we'll discuss that more in the budget. But I wanted to give a shout out to our graphic designer Jessica Avila for designing such great Women Bike Women Lead material for us. And as you can see, she did a great job with all the brochures and everything. All right, there you go, Maria. I'll give it to you.
Sure, I'll move through this really quickly as much as I can. I couldn't thank our panelists enough for bringing so much dimension to our event. I think even Daniela and I felt surprised at many points that we were really hitting some topics that I don't think come up in a lot of places. We got to talk about inequities, policing, race issues. We got to talk about like all the things that make us uncomfortable and things that we aspire to see in advocacy in Los Angeles. And namely, I think it was a healing session for some and a really good therapy session for a few of us too, to be able to unload a lot of the issues we've been experiencing, and also a really uncomfortable place for other people who have not been exposed to some of these things. And you know, we started the day like even introducing ourselves with preferred gender pronouns, so that we don't assume that everyone who ended up in this event were all identified as women, because we want to be inclusive of trans people and people who are gender nonconforming, and just give people that new exercise to be able to exercise that skill of being able to introduce yourself and to ask and not to assume and things like that. We really enjoyed our panelists so much because I think they were able to share a lot of unique things about the agencies that they represent, but also stand out as individuals. I think a lot of times we, as advocates, wear our organization's labels all the time and maybe sometimes get lost in that and don't get to speak on our behalf. And so this was a really safe space that we tried to guard, where people can speak freely about things they cared about, whether it was like funding issues at the places that they worked, or mansplaining that they were tired of experiencing in the advocacy circles, or even in the federal government. I thought that this was a really cool space to knock out some of those issues that we felt like we needed to discuss. Next slide.
All right. And this is a final
So we just
photo. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, sorry. I skipped a second. But you know, we did activities, we had panels, we broke out in different groups. We talked about certain issues that we recognize in our communities, whether it was like policy issues, collaboration issues, and we try to figure out how can we build allies to strengthen our efforts and to have some creative solutions to things that we've been experiencing. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I just realized the time, and I'm like, oh no. So, so this is our final photo. I think this just was able to bring everybody that came to the summit and was able to feel this connectedness towards. After the summit happened, we felt more connected to one another and understood each other's goals. We also did a mini bike ride after the summit to go get ice cream, so that was kind of fun, but no photos were taken there at that one. So we'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, a quick glance. We had this intention of evaluating our activities, and here was one of the outcomes for our summit, that generally people feel like they learned new information during the event and they could apply the information to their work and personal lives, and they all seemed to agree that they were able to identify bike-related issues in the community, have the opportunity to discuss it, identify collaborators, and we were thankful that they said that they would recommend this to other people. Next slide. We took our feedback really seriously. I thought it was wonderful that people were honest, that they enjoyed certain parts of the event, and that they liked that we had an all-women space to discuss issues with no judgment. Next.
Oh, so these were some other. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, that was your note.
Even the space, people said that was maybe too formal, and that some people liked it. Other people thought that it was maybe a little too corporate of an environment with our exercises and even our furniture. So, maybe people prefer to sit in circles and do things differently. But overall, people thought it was a valuable experience, and they wanted us to take this on the road eventually. Next.
So, as any experience that you have or any program that you put together, you learn a lot of lessons. So some of our lessons that we learned were, or at least for me in many ways, was learning how to manage conflicts. Sometimes that will arise when you bring a lot of strong personalities together, and people that are very passionate about their work, and sometimes people might not see eye to eye. And so for me, it was a really great exercise to learn how to diffuse a situation. I've never really had to do that before, and I was pretty nervous, but it was actually, we worked very well together. We had a great support from Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. Our development director, Kelly Martin, she was always 100% helping us out, our cheerleader, always there to give us advice and suggestions. So we were really thankful for LACBC for supporting that, and MCM for giving us their help and support on everything, especially when it came to confronting interesting topics. Another lesson that we learned was budget. We learned that we were well with our budget, but we wanted to create a real-life budget on how much this program would cost if, let's say, it was funded. And so, as you can see here in the center, there were some cost estimates that we created. We also learned a lot about donations, and we were very fortunate that Timbuktu donated 2 amazing design bags, each of them that were personally designed, one by MCM and one by LACBC, to raffle off. We also got donations for burritos, but as lesson learned, sometimes when you get free food doesn't mean it's going to be the best, or it's going to have a lot of mix-ups. So, that was something that we learned, and one of our audience members unfortunately couldn't eat much of the food that we had available for them because of their being, they were vegan and they were meat, and so we weren't very aware of that, and that was something that we learned in our process. All right. Go ahead, Maria.
We felt really great that we could offer a free event using the very limited budget that we had, and Daniela showed you the true cost of a program like this if we didn't get free stuff. I mean, we really tried our best to ask around and get free stuff, but one of the things that we learned from here is that, I think sometimes there's this expectation that people doing this work have to work for free or are powered by passion alone, and we wanted to change that. I think we wanted to start to assign value to the different people who are behind the scenes making events like this happen, to find ways in the future to pay stipends to volunteers, to build in real costs for personnel. Because Daniela and I would probably not be available to volunteer and do a lot of this work with all of the other work that we're doing as our day jobs. So it would be great if we can continue to fund programs like this with someone who's a student or someone who's interested in a part-time gig. So the true costs are in there if we ever wanted to pitch this for a grant and wanted to really generate some real dollars to fund a larger scale program. So our toolkit here exposes a lot more of the details of our planning process and talks through how we try to create an inclusive and welcoming space, which doesn't happen by default. It takes some effort, and even some spaces aren't for everyone. Even with great intentions, there will still be parts of your program or event that exclude people, including people's spouses, people who said their husbands would have loved to come, people who don't understand why we have to have a women-centered program. And so we learned a lot of those things, learned how to respond to questions like that. And, overall, it was about creating a space to celebrate women, not meant to exclude anyone, but to create a space where women can feel like they could be part of something and talk about things that they might not be able to share in other places. So check out the toolkit. That's our URL right there.
Yes, it's a really easy toolkit to view, and so this is just a photo image of part of it, but please check it out. It has all the information we discussed and in more details. So what's next for this? As Maria mentioned, we found that this was very valuable, and we were fortunate enough to donate a lot of our time and having MCM and LACBC support. But we always wonder, well, what does the future hold if programs like this aren't being valued and financially valued, like they're not being funded by either government agencies or even organizations or foundations. So that's more of a question that we would like to throw out there for people to think about. How valuable are these types of programs that are empowering women and to become change agents, and I mean how valuable financially, because as you can see there, if an organization would like to replicate this, they might have to see that they might need to set aside $5,000 for funding or even more, depending. So we are fortunate that with LACBC and MCM are supportive of this type of program, and if something like this wanted to come out in the future, I know LACBC is very supportive of replicating this in their community again. So we have that open for whoever would like to kind of want to come in and create this again. As Maria mentioned, we had a lot of students involved in our summit. Because we have UCLA and USC really close by, so maybe this is something that can be carried on in a student capacity level. So that's for the next steps for us.
Yes, I completely agree. I think the possibilities are endless now. We haven't committed to doing this again, even though it was a pretty successful pilot, and we have a lot of requests to do things like this again. But we want to acknowledge that there's a lot of work being done already in Los Angeles for people hosting bike rides at no cost, and they're doing it because they love it. And I think they're the true winners here, because they really created a huge thing out of not much. So I think that they really are huge assets to our community, and I think the spirit of Women Bike, Women Lead will carry on, like despite any type of uncertainty in our future budget.
So with that, thank you guys for listening in. I know we went a little bit over, but Liz, maybe we have some questions? Or
Yes, we do. I just wanted to make another shout out for the online toolkit. I got a chance to get a sneak peek of it, and it is really great, really easy to use, very accessible, and it's nice to look at too. So if you're at all interested in replicating this or collaborating with some folks who might be interested, definitely share that link. It's a lot of great stuff. And I also just want to say thank you to you both, Daniela and Maria, for putting this on and really making it so simple for folks to make happen in their communities.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody ever wants to chat or advice, there's my contact information, my email and Twitter name. So please feel free to reach out. I am always here to help out.
Great. So we do have a question here from Ariana Green. They're wondering, did you establish measures of success? If so, what were they and how were they measured?
Sure. We didn't go through this rigorous evaluation planning process, but I think our main goals for success for the rides was to, one, collect these online surveys just to get some kind of qualitative data about people's interests. Like, we didn't set any measures, but the survey kind of outlines like some of the some of the outcomes we were interested in, that we wanted people to hopefully say that they learned something from the event, that they found the space useful, that they would attend again. They were just very basic, but I feel like if we did do this all over again, we would set certain metrics where people can score activities, where we would aim for a certain number for bike rides, where we could recruit a certain number of volunteers, that we would fundraise a certain amount of money. But I think we really were hopeful and really grateful for whatever we would get. But I think that's really part of our lessons learned. As you'll see in the toolkit, we would have liked to evaluate it more and set some stricter goals.
Great. And I'll just remind folks, feel free to put your questions into the chat box. We can go another few minutes if you have any other questions. While I wait for those, I was curious, if there were any unexpected challenges that came up along the way while you were planning and organizing, or if you could elaborate a little bit more on what some of those challenges were and how you worked around them or overcame them.
Daniela, want to take that one?
Yeah, challenges when creating the summit, or just the whole series?
I guess the whole thing. Certainly, if it arose around the summit, certainly interested in that too. But from the entire event, program altogether, I'm curious as well.
Sometimes there's a lot that I can't even think about it. But I think one of our challenges was that we wanted to really make this an inclusive space, and sometimes we had to tell, there were some people, as Maria mentioned, that said, well, I wish my significant other came, and this is being exclusive, and I'm not able to attend. And so we didn't mean to make anybody feel like, oh, you're not wanted. Of course we love that support, but we wanted to really create this series that were mainly for women and women-identified individuals, because we felt like it was an opportunity that doesn't really happen often here in Los Angeles. And so it was kind of challenging, at least for me, to figure out how to explain that without having somebody taking it very personal. But it's not meant to be like that, but sometimes personal or emotions can easily get involved, and that can always be something you have to figure out, like, how do I work around this without making somebody feel, without making them feel like it's something personal. It's not. So that was one of the challenges that I came across doing this. So it was something that I learned a lot from. As for logistic-wise, there were challenges of, let's say, the donations and the time and the budget was always a challenge, because actually we did really well on our budget, but we had to really, really push for the donations and a lot of our free labor, and just doing a lot of that, finding stuff around the house to use. So that was always challenging, because sometimes we would say, well, what happens if we ran out of the money? Could we borrow from, luckily LACBC and MCM were willing to give us a donation match. But like I said, we did really well that we actually were right on budget, so we didn't have to do that. But that was always something at least for me, I had to stress about, is the finances.
Great. Well, I think we're about at the end of our time. We don't have any more questions. So I just wanted to say thank you again to Maria and Daniela, and to LACBC and to MCM for all their work on this, and pulling off just a really tremendous event that will hopefully be replicated in a lot of different communities across the country. And I'll just say again that their toolkit is at womenbikewomenlead.org. wix.com/toolkit. And I'll just say now, we'll be posting a sort of wrap-up blog post on the League's website tomorrow morning that'll include this webinar as a video, in addition to linking out to that toolkit and to the presentation files from today. So I just want to say thank you again to our presenters and to everyone who listened in today, and look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.